Welcome to the View from the Inside podcast, episode number 15. I'm Kevin Richardson, the president of Tactical Wealth Management and the host of the View from the Inside podcast. I always get super fired up when we get these guests put together for our podcast. I always talk about how blessed I am to run across people via my day job as a financial advisor or my weekend job as a broadcaster for San Jose State, calling college football. And our guest today is a guy that I'd never met, but I had some common friends that knew Luke, and anyhow, I reached out. Luke's got a book coming out, and this guy is Luke Falk, former pro football player and probably one of the best college quarterbacks ever. We'll dive into his numbers here in just a minute, but he's a former Washington State Cougar, and I got to let Luke know he's the second Coug to be on the podcast. Our first one was John Sukanik, which was a guy that played offensive line in the 90s at Washington State, Luke, and he plays baseball catch every day, and he's done it I think he's at about 1,200 days in a row right now. But anyhow, he was a lot of fun. I know that any Washington State Cougar you get is always going to be fun. But Luke, thanks so much for spending some time with us and ultimately talking about your book.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
Well, want to remind everybody the opinions voiced on the podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual to determine which strategies or investments are suitable for you. Consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. And Luke Falk and his company are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Tactical Wealth Management. We'll do a little financial piece here as we're late in the year. Just want to remind everybody, if you're a client of ours and you need to do your required minimum distribution, you'll be hearing from Beth and I in the next couple of weeks. If you're not a client and you're in your 70s, you need to be thinking about that required minimum distribution. If you haven't heard from your advisor, you want to follow up. And if you're managing it on your own, you want to make sure you figure out how all that works. And with that, we're going to jump into talking to Luke about this book that he wrote. It's called The Mind Strength Playbook, Master Your Mind, Elevate Your Game. And first off, Luke, what gave you the idea to write a book?
Yeah, what gave me that crazy idea? I tell you, it's been a freaking process, but it's been pretty enjoyable. So in 2015, I was a sophomore at Washington State going into my sophomore season, and I just had this aha of what I wanted to do. And I actually called my dad up and said, Dad, I know what I want to do with my life. And it wasn't I want to be a pro football player. It wasn't any of that. And he wouldn't let me tell him on the phone. So he actually flew up to Pullman. And if you guys know where Pullman, I mean, it's a trek, especially from Utah and all that. So really meant a lot to me. And I told him, I said, Dad, I want to do what Wayne Dyer does. I want to write books. I want to speak. I want to help people become the best versions of themselves. So that was really the first inclination that I wanted to write a book, was when I was in college, actually. Then, my career happens. I go play in the NFL, and cut shorter than I anticipated that it would. And when I got out, I just started to work on kind of a curriculum that I just got thinking. I'm like, well, we work so hard as athletes training our body, but what are we doing to really master our mind? What are we really doing to work on our mind as hard as we are, the physical side of the game? And
Right.
really, I got thinking, in life in general, there's so much external noise and distractions. I mean, now more than ever with all the social media and stuff, we need mind strength now more than ever, because we need the ability to master our inner world so we can handle anything that the external world throws at us. So my original idea with this whole mind strength thing is, well, I'll be an adjunct professor at Washington State. I'll create a curriculum. I'll teach it to the students there because I think it's so critical, right? We learn all these other things that I don't necessarily use in my day-to-day life, but I use mind strength every freaking day.
Right.
So I created a curriculum with my buddy Nick Begg, who's my old teammate, and then I started coaching on it in the private quarterback coaching world. Then I got into college coaching and I started coaching it, and it's just evolved from there. And then I got out of college coaching, and I was like, you know what, it's time to put the pen to paper, and there we go. So now I got a book. It's pretty fun. It's surreal when I got it. My agent's like, let's not sleep with the book, I mean, that's, anyways. So I definitely cuddled up to it that night. It's one of my most proud accomplishments, I'd say, along with hearing Coach Leach say, "Hey, you're on scholarship," being a former walk-on.
Well, I want to pull on a couple of those threads, and I also want to plug your book. You can jump on Amazon. We're recording this podcast on October 14th. Your book comes out on October 24th, which is actually good timing. This podcast will probably be out by then, but want to encourage everybody that's listening. You can jump on Amazon and grab that book right there. Talking about your origin story. So you grew up in Logan, Utah. That's where you live now. You came out to California, played a little bit of high school football, then went back to Logan, Utah. And the thing that jumped out at me was you were set to go to Cornell. Maybe you've heard of it, Andrew Bernard, right on The Office, but you're ready to go play there. There's a coaching change. So things change for you. And ultimately you go to Washington State, but you go to Washington State as a walk-on. So explain that thought process to me. I'm a parent of two quarterbacks. One of them walked on at Stanford. And boy, that is no easy task. That's for sure. So talk to me about that. How did that thing evolve, and why did you land at Washington State to be a Cougar?
Yeah, I would just say kind of the stars aligned in a funky way. When things were happening early on, I was I was just like, man, because I originally had a Florida State offer as a sophomore. I had my tape was good enough. Apparently, I got that, and I just thought they would roll in. And then my family, we moved out to California. My parents, I was competing against a guy named DJ Nelson as a junior. He was a year older, and then I had
Okay.
his younger brother Chase Nelson, who was a freshman. I'm a sophomore. So my dad said I was in a full Nelson, and I was splitting time between the older brother. And my dad's like, "You're never gonna, you're never gonna be able to be the starter probably." And we live in, kind of a smaller town. He had a quarterback guru in his ear saying, "Hey, he needs to move down to California. We can train him all the time, and he's going to be able to get recruited at a higher level." So, my parents bought that. We moved our family, and it was disastrous from, all fronts. We had a really
Right.
good thing going in Logan, and but I look at that time, and I really learned a lot during that period. So it really helped me with my mind strength and my development. But family falls apart. We end up moving back to Logan. I get deemed ineligible. So yeah, I got red flags on me. And my team won a state championship without me. So, if you're a college coach and this guy goes away and now this team's doing better than when he was gone, yeah, I wouldn't want to recruit him either.
Okay.
So going into my senior year, I got offered by Idaho. Uh, that staff got fired. And then the new staff came in and said, "Hey, you're not athletic enough to play for us," which is understandable, right? That probably didn't fit their style. Yeah, I had the Cornell stuff, and then I had Washington State, committed to Cornell, and I instantly, right as I committed to Cornell, I just felt like I was selling myself short when it came to my football dreams. Like I went to a game at Columbia, Cornell, Columbia, and it was like they're maybe less than my high school had because my whole
Yeah.
town came out to football games. So I was just like, I don't want it. I don't know if this is the right thing. And then fate would have it, right? It's like the coach leaves, as Matthew McConaughey said, that was my green light. And then I decided I'm going to go walk on at Washington State. So funny how I got there. And then, yeah, it's definitely, as you know, with your son, it's not a Rudy movie. It's not you go up
Right. Yeah.
there and you're going to be starting and playing and they're carrying you off on the field. In fact, it's, I think people will get a kick. The opening chapter of or the opening scene of chapter one is what it's like being a walk-on, what it was like for me up there. And because I always get asked like, "Hey, what was that period like?" And you'll find out. You're getting I remember we had a practice and I fumbled a scout team rep,
Right.
and our coach is like, "Number 4, get the out of there. I never want to see your, in there again. Los say." So I didn't get a whole scout team rep the entire season.
Wow.
And yeah, just I stood back and I watched. And you don't get to eat with the team, or at least you didn't when I was a walk-on. I remember I was trying to earn some extra money one of the summers, and I did some catering stuff, and I went and did a catering event. It was for our athletic department, and I got the table of the bigwigs. I got Bill Moose, who was our athletic director, and a number of other top honchos there. And I go up there and rather than hearing maybe something, I'm trying to like listen in, see if my name gets mentioned. Well, of course it's not. And instead, the guy that I was competing against, the 4-star quarterback, well, they were saying how good he looked and how much people were
Oh,
talking about that. So it's just like, there was constant reminders of my position. And, it just really the stars aligned for me. People transferred out. And then I got an opportunity to compete. Leach was true to his word in that regard. And thankfully I had made the most of it. So I attribute it to my mind strength. I was working with a sports psychologist before that time. I lacked a lot of confidence. I really lacked belief in myself. But then I started training my mind like I trained my body, and the results were unbelievable, unbelievable. And that obviously allowed me to play at a pretty high level. And then when I got successful and sustained success, then I quit working on those things, and
okay.
I victim my way out of the NFL pretty quick. So it's fun for me now being in the seat that I'm at now and working with college athletes and college teams and high school athletes, and being able to have the full perspective of going from a kid who lacked confidence to then reaching goals that you never dreamed of, then to fall off the mountaintop because you're not working on it, then to go coach these principles as a college coach.
Yeah.
And then so I feel like I'm very well equipped in this regard, and it was all kind of an apprenticeship for me in what I'm doing.
Well, and we kind of went by your numbers, and I got to throw these out, and I need to frame it for the non-football fans that listen to this podcast. So you redshirt in 2013, 2014, Connor Halliday, he's the quarterback. I'm assuming that's the guy you were talking about, that they were talking about at the table, who
It's actually a guy, I won't mention him, but I won't mention, he actually transferred out. So no, Halliday was the older guy. I wasn't competing against him.
okay. So you end up starting the last 3 games of 2014, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, your first game. So you're squared up against Sean Mannion at Oregon State, correct?
Yeah.
You throw for 471 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions in your first game as a starter at quarterback.
Got pretty lucky, I tell you. That might have been my best game I ever played. So I definitely, God felt like he was on my side that game. So that was for sure.
That is deal in the rock. Sean Mannion, a guy from Northern California, the East Bay here in California, and went up to Oregon State. He threw for 419 that day. So then you go on 2015, 2016, 2017. You go 9-4, 8-5, 9-3. You throw for 14,481 yards. You complete 68% of your passes. So for the non-football fans, a solid college quarterback is going to be 60% or better. If you're somewhere around 70%, it's amazing. And you were 68%. You had 119 touchdowns, which is just crazy to talk about, and only 39 interceptions. So you were a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. For an average college quarterback, it's 2-to-1. So for you to be 3-to-1 is really, really amazing. So, you had a coach, and I'm sure that probably comes up a lot in this book, a guy named Mike Leach. And if you're not a football fan, you should Google Mike Leach and just read about him a little bit. But he and a guy named Hal Mumme, they went to Iowa Wesleyan as coaches. And there's a book out there called The Perfect Pass. I'm sure you've read it.
I haven't actually.
Man,
I probably lived it with Coach Leach though.
You did, but it talks about the idea they had. Mike Leach, total character, and we'll have you talk about him a little bit. I've got a great beef jerky story as it relates to Mike Leach, but basically they were trying to be not anti-football, but anti all of like the real onerous, hard things that don't produce results. So there was no playbook, right? We're not going to sit down and make copies. And then when we make a change of a play, we've got to give you a new page, right? They spread the linemen out, which their idea was if you spread out the defense, it makes it a little tougher on the defense to get after the quarterback. And then, of course, you can talk about the passing game that they implemented. But talk a little bit about Mike Leach and what Mike Leach isms are in your Mind Strength playbook.
Yeah, well, they're scattered all over there, and he
Yeah.
certainly was a character. For those that probably know him, he definitely liked talking non-football things quite a bit. I mean, he gave me marriage advice. I think he gave a ton of people marriage advice. I think maybe, my engagement at one point probably sparked that whole conversation. If you haven't watched that, I'd recommend go do it. You probably resonate with it. He basically his advice is get married as fast as possible because the girls go crazy. So. Uh, Anyways, but yeah, he was great for me. I mean, he was a no BS, no nonsense type of coach. And what I loved about him is that like you said, he didn't focus on things that weren't going to produce and move the needle, right? He wasn't going to waste his time with stuff that maybe other coaches do because that's the way it's always been done. Coach Leach was very innovative. We were only going to work on things that made us better and produce results. And I think the greatest thing about him, and that I try to continue in the book, is, he was all about application. It wasn't like, if you've got a client, you could tell them everything in the world, but if you don't know how to get them to apply it, what good is that? So
Right.
a lot of coaches in football, you could go to a quarterback right now and he can tell you what the front is, he can tell you what the pressure look is, he can tell you the coverage, but he can't actually use that information to help them play better. Coach Leach didn't bog us down by things we didn't need to know. He was a master at getting us what he needed us to do and execute at a high level. So, I'm one of maybe 10 quarterbacks that have played for him that those numbers are just average, like average for his quarterbacks. It's like I'm not even the top tier guy who's played for him. I'm among the top maybe, but um, it's because of the system that he created for us. And then I also love too, from a leadership standpoint and all that is, there's a great concept that I've come to think about. It's hurt versus harm. In fact, I had a therapist tell me about this because I was actually in a relationship and I was, kind of going back and forth. We weren't in a great place and neither of us wanted to be the one to hurt one another. But what we were doing was we were harming one another by being in the relationship. And so I think coaches do this all the time is they have, they don't tell the kid the truth. They don't tell the kid the actual reality because they're afraid of hurting him.
Right.
But what they do is they string him along. It's like he's along for the ride and it just harms him. Leach didn't do that at all. He's going to tell me exactly what he's thinking. Sure, it hurt sometime, but I knew where I stood and then I could make decisions off of that to become a better player. So there's so much of his stuff throughout the book, and one of my favorite things with Coach Leach is he's less is more. All these coaches, and I think people in general, they just try to complicate things. They just put more and more and more and more. They like this idea, they like that idea. Well, if we brought in a new idea, we took one out
Right.
because we only wanted to. He has a great line. It's like, hey, run only practice plays that you're going to call. Only call plays that you practice. Throw to an open guy and don't pass an open one up. So it's like he was so simple, yet that was so profound. And I think that gets lost on us. I'm sure there's even some of those principles in with your wealth business. It's like,
Right.
right, we just talked about it before the podcast. It's like, hey, let's spend less than we make. Like, how simple of a concept is that? But a
Right.
very profound.
Right. 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 Yeah. I have this, so I've been a radio broadcaster for San Jose State for 18 years. And prior to 2020, you could actually reach out the week of a game and get an interview, radio or a telephone interview, and record that, and you'd use it in your pregame. Well, post 2020, everybody kind of went to video, and they'll just tell you, hey, just pull it off the internet, right? But I had this trick that I would use because I'm a guy that's on the phone a lot with my job, having cold called a lot in my career. And when I'd get a coach scheduled for the interview, I always had some really good story or question that was about their background. It was germane to them. And I'd get them on the phone and I'd say, hey, the recorder's not on, but before we do and I'm going to ask you this, this, and this, but before we do that, tell me about XYZ. Well, Mike Leach had been an assistant coach down at Cal Poly. And an old buddy of mine, Bill Fairbanks, has lived in San Luis his whole life. He's done the box, the down marker on the at the Cal Poly games since he was 16 years old, right? Has never missed a game. Well, he would always have coaches, he'd rent him a room. And so Leach rented a room from Bill and then also worked for Bill at Sands Liquor and Deli that Bill owned. So I asked him about his days down in San Luis working at Sands Liquor and Deli, and instantly he went to Catania Brothers beef jerky. He said, that's the best beef jerky I've ever had, and I can't get it up here, right? So anyhow, we, do the interview, move on. I then get on the internet. I send him Catania Brothers beef jerky. It arrives a week later. I'm on my mountain bike in the afternoon. My phone rings and I look and it's Mike Leach. So I answer the phone and we talked about that beef jerky for 30 minutes. It was classic, but that's Coach Leach, right? He loved
really
to go
is.
a million miles deep on things.
He certainly did. Yeah. Yep. And people want to, they try to tie him down and ask him about football stuff. And he just had other interests. He had a bunch of other hobbies. I mean, how many coaches? So Nick Saban in the off season is probably recruiting like crazy and all these
Right.
other well, Leach is down in Key West
Yeah.
and he's enjoying life. And this is the nice thing about it though, is what did that do for us quarterbacks? Well, he didn't have a structure for us to do. Well, we made one. We made our own scripts. We made all these things. So it created tremendous ownership on our part, which I think, he probably had some genius behind it besides just wanting to go drink some margaritas down in Key West or pina coladas and go hang out at one of his favorite spots down that way. If you're down in Key West, I'll give Captain Tony's a shout out. That was Coach Leach's spot. He's got a bar stool down there. So if you ever want to go see some Mike Leach stuff, go to Captain Tony's.
Yeah. God. Yeah. That guy is definitely missed. College football was better with him around. I want to pull on another thread. So your pro career, you were a 6th-round pick of the Tennessee Titans. You played at Miami. You played for the New York Jets with David Fales, who's a local guy from Monterey County. Went to San Jose State. Go Spartans. And a good friend of the podcast. You spent a little bit of time in the CFL, and you touched on it earlier in this interview. Your pro career didn't go the way that you wanted it to. Two questions around that. Number one, it always feels like quarterback. Everyone thinks that the quarterback feels great about his career. And when you listen to Tom Brady talk, all he'll talk about is the things that didn't go well. And he's maybe the best quarterback ever. So number one, that's a quarterback thing, right? And then secondly, how do you touch on that in your book? Because it sounds like there's a lot of life lessons kicking around in your pro career.
Yeah, totally. Well, I view it as an apprenticeship type of deal, and I think probably even most athletes, you always ask them how they did after a game. They could have thrown for 471 yards and 5 touchdowns, and they'll find I could have made that read there.
Well, you
Because I
kind
think
of did that. Yeah. You were like, oh, I was just lucky, right?
Yeah, I just think, you're constantly always trying to evolve. And I think that's probably part of human nature. It's like you're trying to find the fault to be able to improve it and get better. So I do think there's a mind strength principle, though, of making sure you are looking at what you're doing so you can gain confidence and you can understand what makes you a good player. Because I think that kind of gets lost with some people. But I think throughout the book, it's not like I'm just saying, hey, look at all these great things that I've accomplished. Here's how I did it. There's a lot of points where if I went back, I would have done it differently. Or as a coach, definitely having different perspective. And that's the fun part for me is I viewed that time as what a great learning. So now I can be a great steward of, my opportunities that I had to do what I really love doing. And that's really what I think it boiled down to as well with my career is, yeah, I was very externally motivated. Like I used to have that Toby Keith song, How Do You Like Me Now, as my anthem. And I had this like list of people who I felt wronged me or passed me up. And I had plenty of them being a walk on, right? And it's funny, Oregon State, they were going to offer me. I was watching a Utah football game, and the coach said, "We are going to call you tonight. We're going to offer you." I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks, and then I finally get him on the phone, and they said, "Hey, we don't think you have a strong enough arm." Well, that was the same staff that I got to play week one and have that great game and become the Pac-12 Player of the Week. So that was like, all right, cross them off, and it was just a series of crossing people off who I thought had pass me up or whatever.
Right.
Well, I got to a point where I had achieved all that I wanted to achieve besides, the Pac-12 championship. That was the only thing, but it didn't fill me up the way I thought it would. It didn't give me fulfillment the way I thought it would. And so my motivation to keep doing that and keep putting in the effort was not there because at the end of the day, football, I love playing, but it's not like what I was born to do. And it's funny, I'll watch some videos of me back in the day and I'm like, oh, I'm born to be a quarterback. That was just talk. That was
Okay.
just a script that I heard from mom and dad. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like, um, but so now what I'm doing is like I'm very internally motivated. Yes, there's external motivation. Yes, I want to be the top mind strength coach. Yes, I want to have a best-selling book. But the drive comes more internal from listen, I want to help people maximize their full potential through strengthening their minds. As a player, I was really focused on, well, how am I going to get viewed? Are people going to like me? What are my accolades going to be to try to make me feel better about myself? And so when I got to the NFL, my motivation to keep doing what I needed to do to be a great player was not there.
Right.
And what a great learning for me though. And it's like I think everything in my life has happened perfectly the way it should for me to be exactly where I'm at right now. And I'm sure 10 years later I'll say the same thing about what I'm going through, the hardships, this, that, and the other. But because I think every moment that you're in is really it's a great opportunity for you to learn to be able to develop the skills that maybe you're going to use in another phase.
Okay.
I mean, for example, I'll just give you a little deal. I was the GA in high school filming my team win a state championship when I came back from California.
Oh,
So
wow.
I couldn't play, right? I filmed the games, I broke the games down, the footage, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
All those skills that I learned, my film study, my hard work, my preparation, the competitive drive, all helped me become a Pac-12 record-setting quarterback. All helped me go be able to walk on. Stuck in the moment. But maybe that the deal that you're going through right now, maybe the tough circumstances actually preparation for your higher calling for
Right.
what you're supposed to be doing rather than, just thinking that, oh, I'm just I'm getting screwed right here.
Right. Interesting. Wow. What a journey. So who else, and I of course lean into football because I love talking about football so much and the life lessons and all those different things. But sounds like with this book, this is clearly, hey, this isn't just a sports preparation book. This is a book that's kind of a roadmap for how you go live your life, whether you're a financial advisor or a life coach or whatever you're doing on a daily basis, correct?
I think so. How I break it down is like the primary audience is an athlete, a coach, and a parent of an athlete. And, it's going to be hey, there's parent tips or coach tips or athlete tips. And then I have walk on wisdom. The secondary audience is anybody that wants to maximize their life, anybody that feels like they want mind strength. And the nice thing about this book is I don't have $20 to my name and I'm trying to preach of how to get you wealthy, right? I've done what I talk about in this book. I've lived it, I've coached it, and I know it works. It's not theory. There's a lot of books out there that are theory. It's like,
Right.
oh, I read this or I learned this in school, but I myself have never done it, or I myself have never coached anybody on it.
Right.
And then the other part is kind of what I talked about with Coach Leach and what inspired it is knowledge isn't power. If I know the answer is C or I know a certain investment's going to be good, yet I don't do it, well, that serves me no, that's not going to do me any good. Versus it's the application of knowledge that's power. So if I know the answer is C and I put C, okay, now I'm cooking. This book provides a black and white roadmap of how to apply what I'm talking about. And there's even like a virtual locker room, I call it. There's a little QR code. You go in there for free. I got exercises. I got guided visualizations. I got guided breath work. I've got, a ton of tools to be able to help that application part. And so I love it. I think, I'm very biased. I would have never said this as a player because I just, I just didn't have that confidence in it. This book is a top tier book. I love it. It truly can change somebody's life, in my opinion, if they apply what's in the chapters. And it's in a fun way. It's sequential. It's not prescriptive. When I first wrote it, it was very prescriptive. And my wife and my sister read it, and they're like, no, 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 you got a story to tell. You got to tie these things with your story. So it ended up becoming kind of memoirish. And as I was writing, it's like, man, the memories flood. And oh, yeah, this is how this principle got tied to it. So it was very fun. And I think people will see themselves in my story, whether it's now or maybe in the future,
Right. Well, and so in this book, I have this question for you because it's interesting to me. I don't know, probably in my early 50s when I maybe learned the lesson, but you have these football coaches and, oh, you've got to work hard. Well, working hard has never been a problem for me, right? And to the point where you work so hard that you break yourself down, right? You're just not playing well. You're not making right decisions at work because you're going too hard. You're not recovering. How do you deal with that in the book? Because I know with quarterbacks, having raised two quarterbacks, that's a big deal because the guy that wants to throw every day, by the time camp gets here, he's got no arm left, right? And,
Totally.
and again, quarterbacks are their own worst enemy because, you throw for 471 and you go, well, I was just lucky. I got to do better next time, right? How do you deal with recovery in the book?
Yeah, well, certainly it's like if you're on a road trip and you don't get gas, well, you're going to run out of fuel. If you don't take care of your car and have good maintenance on it, well, it's not going to last very long. Same thing with me. In fact, I look at my career, there are periods where I was just go, 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 go. That part of the desire or lack of desire to continue to do what I've been doing, I was burnt out. My why had dried up, and I never gave myself an opportunity to relax.
Right.
So my sports psychologist actually at one point, he's like, "Hey, there's a new skill I want you to learn." And I'm like, I'm waiting for it. I'm ready for it. He said, "Relax when possible." I'm like, "Well, what the heck does that mean?" He's like,
Oh, wow.
"Yeah." He's like, "When you have an opportunity to have downtime, I want you to enjoy it. I want you to live in the present and not just be like work, 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 work." And I think it's a great skill for really anybody. So it's like, okay, well, you have a Sabbath day, so it's like have a rest day. Get off your phone. Get off. Do things that are going to restore and rejuvenate you. That's not just watch TV. I think that actually probably drains people. Get outside. Go do some activities that you love. Maybe watch a good movie if you want, but really be into it, not just be on your phone and all that stuff. So I think for me, I really prioritize now in my own life. Like sleep is a huge. I mean, that's a huge piece, right? If you're not sleeping properly, which early on build my business, which I'm sure you can relate to. It's like,
Yes.
no, 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 I gotta be, if I'm not working, then this thing's not moving. But what I found is I'm much more productive when I do get proper sleep, when I do rest, when I do take, hey, I'm an hour on, then I'm gonna go take a 30-minute walk. Now I'm coming back. Okay, now I'm juiced up again. So I think within the book, I talk about being able to create and sustain a winning environment. Hey, people you have around you, people, what information do you intake, the inner environment you have yourself, but also part of that is, what are you eating? What's
Right.
your recovery like? Be able to get some downtime. So I think it's a great piece. I don't think it's talked about enough, especially, for maybe the younger kids who haven't developed that type of work ethic yet. But I
Right.
think for the kids, and so it's very, you got to be selective with kind of who you roll that skill out to, because if you got a kid who's, not doing the discipline things, well, hey, we got to get on your butt about getting these things done before you have that time to relax. Because what a lot of kids do, they procrastinate, and really what it does is it drains them.
Right.
Because like I got this one kid, he's been struggling with certain things, and it's like, well, what are you thinking about when you're playing the video game and you've got your homework or you've got your film study you got to do? Well, I'm thinking about what I should be doing. I'm like, well, how
Bingo.
much are you enjoying the game then? He's like, well, I'm not. I'm like, how about let's work first, then play second, and then you can really enjoy the play that you have. And so, anyways, it's like the light bulb went off in his head in that regard. And obviously, it's not going to be a one-time fix. He's got to continue to apply it. But I think if you're somebody that does the right things and you've gotten done what you need to get done, to relax and to rest is essential. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself up.
Boy, I got a new saying. I got it right on the post-it. Relax when possible. A quick story. When I was at Stanford, the running back was Brad Muster. Brad was a first-round draft pick, played for a lot of years in the NFL like you, had a great NFL career, and we were roommates, he and three other guys, my senior year, his senior year. And I remember thinking, gosh, Brad just kind of lays around the house, but he had that mastered, right? It was like when there's nothing going on, sit down, relax, and recover. And that guy would go out and, he'd run the ball like a runaway horse. He was amazing. And I could never square that up, right? It took decades for me to figure out, oh, he was great on Saturday. Number one, he was a great athlete and worked hard. But number two, he had recovered. And that was something that I could never figure out. That's for sure. Give us the best example of an athlete that's as close to this Mind Strength Playbook. The guy that you played with that got as close to this book in terms of carrying himself as an athlete. Could be a college guy, could be a pro guy.
Well, I'm going to go a guy that I played against, and it's going to be you're not going to be too shocked. It's Tom Brady. I
Okay.
use Tom Brady a lot as an example within the book, and I actually used a lot of his quotes and this, that, and the other because I think he is the epitome of what mind strength is all about. He is somebody who, think of all the external noise that has gone on throughout his career.
Yeah.
Spygate, Deflategate. I mean, there's a number of things. He's divorced, this, that, and the other. Injury, had a kid with a gal that wasn't married to, and that caused some whatever. It's just like the guy has been a master at mastering his inner world, so he can really handle anything that the external world throws at him. How about when they try to get rid of him with Jimmy Garoppolo? It's like the
Right.
guy. Mind strength is about being able to rise to the occasion and play your best when your best is needed rather than unraveling. And in my opinion, he's done that better than anybody. And really, a key foundation of mind strength is taking ownership and then the discipline behind it. And he has been, I mean, you can't play 24 years in the NFL without it. So there's a great Tony Robbins skill. I think he learned it from Jim Rohn called modeling. And so what modeling is you find somebody who is where you want to be and you model their behavior, you model what they do, you read what they read, you act the way that they act. How do they respond? What are they listening to? And that was Tom Brady was that guy for me. I wanted
Right.
to be just like him. And guess what? If I put my hand where he put his hand when he's scaling the mountain, I'd probably reach the summit too. And you know what's funny about it is every lunch in college, I would sit down, I'd YouTube Tom Brady, and I would learn more about him, and I would try to implement that in my own life. So there's a book that he read called The Four Agreements that he said I read it every year. And so what did I do? I read The Four Agreements, and I learned two mind strength skills from that. Take nothing personally, that what others say and do really isn't about me, it's about them, because my identity was so wrapped up in what people thought of me. That helped me get off of that. That helped me get off of what I call the teeter-totter trap.
Okay.
And then also another skill of what not how. When a coach tells me something or yells at me, like Coach Leach, right? Hey, what the F you doing, Falk? I got to focus on, hey, what's the coaching point, not how is it being delivered? So two skills, two great skills that I learned because I was modeling Tom Brady. Well, it worked so well that Tom Brady, sixth round draft pick 199. Luke Falk, sixth round draft pick 199. Tom
Right.
Brady's first career start was in the second season at age 24 in the third game of that year, and he faced an NFL legend, Peyton Manning. Well, I was the same exact deal, and guess who I faced? Tom Brady in my
Oh,
first career
wow.
start. So you can't tell me that this modeling stuff doesn't work. Now, the only problem is what I joke with people is that he played for the Patriots and I played for the Jets. So obviously that got screwed up. No, I'm just kidding. But I quit modeling. I quit doing what he was doing. I quit modeling his behavior, and therefore I didn't end up where he ended up ultimately.
Right. Right. Well, Luke, thanks so much for spending time with us. Again, everybody jump out there and get that book. It's on Amazon, the Mind Strength Playbook, Master Your Mind, Elevate Your Game. You've got a website people ought to find their way to also.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's coachlukefalk.com. And if you've got any, if you've got any athletes at home, high school, college age athletes, we do a 8-week signature mind strength training camp. It's awesome. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's on Zoom. And, definitely check that out. We got one starting up on November 3rd, and slots are going fast. We only allow 12 athletes in them. Try to make it really intimate in that regard. But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. And I definitely think there's a mind strength movement going on, not only in sports, but also in the world, because we definitely need it. There's more noise than ever right now. And what are we doing to strengthen our internal system so we can handle that? I think Too often the media or people in general try to control the environment around them. And I'll just give the listeners one last thing. When you focus on things you can't control, your anxiety increases. That's what my sports psychologist taught me. And if
Yeah.
your anxiety increases, how about the quality of your life? What does that do? It goes down. How about your performance? It goes down. So a great way to be able to shift from that is to focus on, hey, what can I control? Right? Rather than seeing the stuff that's going on in the news or all these things that I'm mad and pissed off about. What can I control? And then that helps you get your anxiety down. And a great way to be able to do that, focus on your breath. Focus on your breath. And there's a great breathing technique called the 4-6 breathing technique. You breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, breathe out through your nose for 6 seconds. I would recommend anybody to challenge themselves to, when they find themselves having more anxiety, good chance they're focused on something they can't control. Hey, let me dial up my breath. Breathe in 4, breathe out through 6, and just continue to repeat that, because that's something you can control. And it's a great little shift right there.
Yeah. Great way to start the day, too. I do it every day right here.
There you go. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
excellent.
Right on. Well, again, thanks so much to Luke Falk. Thank you for tuning in. Best thing you can do is give us a follow and share this podcast. If you got a financial question, of course, give us a call, 831-717-1144, or shoot us an email, krichardson@TACWealth. On behalf of Luke and our producer, Bill Tucker, and the good people at Proudmouth, thanks for tuning in, and so long until next time.
Thank you for listening to the View from the Inside podcast with Kevin Richardson. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. To ask questions about topics covered during the show, head over to www.tacwealth.com. And don't forget to check the show notes for additional contact information. Kevin Richardson is a registered representative with and securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards Center for Financial Planning Incorporated owns and licenses the certification marks CFP, Certified Financial Planner, and CFP with plaque design in the United States to Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards Incorporated, which authorizes individuals who successfully complete the organization's initial and ongoing certification requirements to use the certification marks.